I would argue that the Mario Kart series has never been in this weird of a spot. Normally, Nintendo can put out one of these per console and expect it to rake in cash. Often these games are the best-selling titles on their respective consoles. However, the Switch got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe instead, a port of Mario Kart 8 featuring tons of new content that was expanded upon even more with the Booster Course Pass. Seriously, I say this every time, but 96 tracks is ludicrous and something that it's just insane we ever got. However, when a game goes so far above and beyond, adding so much more content than any other entry in the entire series, and specifically Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which added this content over the span of almost a decade, how could Nintendo possibly continue on Mario Kart without the next entry seeming lackluster in comparison to 8 Deluxe? Well, obviously they are going to continue, and in this video, we have 3 unique ideas that act as 3 unique concepts for what this next Mario Kart game could be. We're gonna go in depth to each one of these concepts, talking about tracks, characters, mechanics, online modes, and so much more. So use the timestamps down below to switch between the concepts if you want. And with that out of the way, I'm gonna pass it off to Kgan to introduce the first new idea.
Our first idea for a new Mario Kart game is probably the most obvious, that being Mario Kart 9. It might sound basic, but the reality is there's a lot they could do to a new Mario Kart title. I mean, every Mario Kart game has managed to establish its own identity by introducing unique mechanics and features, and this shouldn't be any different. Considering Mario Kart 8 is almost a decade old, Nintendo's had a long time to think about a new direction for the next entry in the series. Because of that, I'll be going over both what we can expect based off of previous games, and also what I think could be added to a Mario Kart 9 to make it stand out from the rest, allowing it to potentially be the best Mario Kart game we've ever gotten. Before that though, I should probably explain what I mean when I say Mario Kart 9. Well, first I want to address the elephant in the room, because I know a lot of you are thinking it. Isn't Tour Mario Kart 9? And yes, a lot of people consider Mario Kart Tour to be the 9th entry in the series. And personally, I don't really care what you call it. When I say Mario Kart 9, I'm simply referring to a successor to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Basically the next mainline Mario Kart title that's on Nintendo's next console. Whether the game is called Mario Kart 10 or Mario Kart X or something else entirely, it doesn't really matter too much. I've just chosen the name Mario Kart 9 as a placeholder because I think that it easily conveys what I'm talking about. So yeah, you don't need to do too much sleuthing to figure out what Mario Kart 9 is. Basically, just as we got Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS and then Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, Mario Kart 9 would be the exact same concept for Nintendo's next console. Pretty simple stuff, but for all the tour heads out there getting ready to tell me how it's actually Mario Kart 10, there's your own little tangent just for you. And with that out of the way, let's say that Nintendo takes the most obvious route and chooses the Mario Kart 9 option. For the last several generations, with the exception of the Switch, every Nintendo system has gotten its own brand new Mario Kart game. And with a new Mario Kart game, we always get new content. We can definitely expect to see stuff like new characters, new karts, and new tracks, and I'll certainly go over that, but one thing that you can also always expect a new entry to get is a new gimmick. Whether it's anti-gravity, mirror mode, bikes, or 2 characters in a kart, the gimmicks that each game introduces are what make them distinctive and help market new games to people who already own previous games. So if we get a Mario Kart 9, we can expect to see a new gimmick or 2 in that game as well, as gimmicks are what make a new Mario Kart a new Mario Kart. With that being said, what new gimmick do I expect to see in Mario Kart 9? Well, frankly, it's unpredictable. We've seen many different gimmicks introduced to the series over the years, and there are many new gimmicks that could be introduced in this game. However, what I want to see in the next game is more racers. Mario Kart is infamous for its chaos and randomness. Now imagine how chaotic it would be if that randomness was doubled, allowing for up to 24 racers instead of the standard 12. This would completely change the game, and the entire item system would likely have to be revamped as a result. Nintendo recently released F-Zero 99, and the massive amount of racers in that game was enough to turn a 30-year-old racing game into a really exciting experience. Imagine a brand new Mario Kart game with an absurd amount of racers. It would definitely spice up the series. Plus, assuming the next Nintendo console is significantly more powerful than the Switch, allowing for more racers to be displayed on the screen would also be a perfect way to showcase the increased capabilities of that console. Now, I still think that the 12 racers are here to stay, as I'm sure having too many racers could negatively impact the game for more competitive players, as it would wildly affect the consistency of the game. Rather, I would like to see more racers as an option. Instead of being limited to 12 players, you can race with up to 23 friends online, and it would offer a completely different experience that we've never seen before. I also think more racers would pair well with additional modes, such as a knockout mode. A knockout mode would work very similarly to something like Fall Guys. After each race, or maybe even a cup, the lowest performing racers are eliminated animated, and this continues until there is only one racer left. Starting a knockout tournament with 24 racers could replicate the mayhem that we've seen in Fall Guys and make for a really enjoyable experience. Either way, no matter how they incorporate it, 24 racers needs to happen, as otherwise it's just a huge missed opportunity in my opinion, because there's just so much they could do with more racers. Alright, now that I've talked about the next big gimmick, I'm going to dive into the typical Mario Kart stuff, such as characters, tracks, and whatnot. I'll start with new characters, as theoretically, this game could have the biggest roster in any Mario Kart game ever. After all, if we're getting more racers, it would make sense that we get more racers. From the beginning, Mario Kart 8 has always had a weird roster. I mean, we have stuff like an abundance of Mario and Peach clones, and also all 7 Koopalings getting their own slot, while the game launched with some glaring omissions of popular characters. Thankfully, the Booster Course Pass has sided more with unique characters that are popular among fans, generally, but I pretty much would like to see more of that. New characters could also be a great opportunity to give more obscure characters the spotlight for once. For instance, we could see Diddy the Switch Stop Primate. Yeah, a lot of people don't remember this character, but he's actually known to take people's phones and check if they're subscribed to Switch Stop. If not, he will relentlessly haunt their dreams, so if you aren't subscribed, you better do it before the next Mario Kart game comes out, or you'll be seeing this guy in your nightmares. For real though, I think King K. Rool is a prime example, as he was randomly brought back for Mario Sluggers on the Wii, and ended up being put in Smash because he's so popular at this point. I would also love to see Professor Egad make his Mario Kart debut, as he was originally planned for Mario Kart DS and then ended up being cut. Like, he's been a huge part of the Luigi's Mansion series for a while now, it's just his time. Lastly, I want to see more Mario enemies. Dry Bones and Shy Guy have always been really popular characters, I just want to see like a Goomba behind a cart. If that Lindless Mushroom could swing a bat, he can operate a vehicle and I will stand by that. It would just be really funny to see. Next, let's talk about tracks, and frankly, I don't think we should expect the amount of tracks we currently have in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as we have almost 100 tracks by now. 32 has been the standard until recently, and I think something like 48 could be fairly reasonable, since that's the same amount Mario Kart 8 Deluxe launched with, and it could consist of something like 6 Nitro Cups and 6 Retro Cups. As for the tracks themselves, I would love to see more new tracks that are based on specific Mario games. Imagine a track based around the Comet Observatory from Super Mario Galaxy, or a track where you can race inside Peach's castle as you explore the Super Mario 64 universe by hopping from painting to painting. There's so much source material that Nintendo could base tracks like these off of, and we've recently seen Nintendo make an entire Yoshi's Island track for the Booster Course Pass, so we know this concept would definitely work. Mario Kart 8 is the only HD game in the series, so it's certainly the most visually stunning. However, if we're getting more powerful hardware with better graphical capabilities, it wouldn't surprise me if we get tracks that look even better. There's a cool feature in Neo Bowser City where the track's rain can be seen dripping down the screen, as if it's actually pouring onto the camera's lens. Mario Kart 9 could take this idea even further. A desert track could feature a sandstorm that affects your vision as sand starts to cover your screen, or a volcanic track could fill your screen with steam as you drive over molten lava. There's a lot that they could do with this concept, and it would make the tracks feel more immersive. When it comes to retro tracks, it's pretty self-explanatory. They'll probably pick some of the most popular retro tracks and also bring back some tracks that have never been remade, just like we've seen in the Booster Course Pass. One thing I wouldn't mind leaving behind though is the city tracks from Tour. I think they work well in Tour, but in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I feel like a lot of them are forgettable. I hope if we do get any of these tracks, we get 1 or maybe 2 at the most. Since a lot of Mario Kart tracks have been remade at this point, I think a new game could be perfect to finally give us retro tracks from the Mario Kart arcade series. This series is often forgotten, but they actually have a fair amount of cool tracks, and this would allow people to play some of these tracks at home for the first time. I don't expect this to happen, but it just needs to, because it would be awesome. Moving on to karts, there isn't too much to talk about. Obviously, I can't predict every kart that's going to be in the game, but I do have some ideas. Weirdly enough, we saw some really cool concepts for karts in the Mario movie. They could just borrow some of these concepts for a new game. It would honestly be a perfect reference. Another thing about karts, since Mario Kart 7, you've been able to customize your karts by selecting 3 kart parts. And honestly, I would not mind seeing this go. It just feels like every time I introduce someone to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so much unnecessary time is wasted on the kart select screen. Having to make 3 different selections is confusing to new players, and veteran players just pick the roller tires anyway. I don't know if this is a hot take, and I don't hate the kart customization, but I don't feel like it needs to be a Mario Kart mainstay either. Plus, even if they keep the gliding mechanics, the glider could just be preset to your kart, like what used to be the case with tires before Mario Kart 7. Personally, instead of having a ton of individual kart parts, I would rather we just have as many karts in the game as possible, but maybe that's just me. Now let's talk about items, and there's a lot of items they could add. We could of course get returning items like the Mega Mushroom or the POW Block. Honestly, I'll take anything over the Thundercloud. And Tour also has a lot of unique items that aren't in 8 Deluxe, which would work well in a brand new Mario Kart game. But what about new items? Well, I propose a brand new concept that's never been done before. The No Nonsense 9. Okay, actually though, I would love to see some of the new items from Super Mario Wonder translated into Mario Kart. The drill mushroom could allow you to race while underground, allowing you to dodge items and even a shock. And you could also pop out of the ground up to 3 times to take out racers who are above you. I think it would be a great balance where it can be used both passively and aggressively. The elephant fruit could also work well. It would be similar to the Tanuki leaf from Mario Kart 7, but instead of a tail, you would have an elephant trunk on the front of your cart, and you can press the item button to attack other racers with the trunk. I just love the idea of seeing more items from mainline Mario games in Mario Kart, and I think these items would fit perfectly. There's one item in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that's pretty divisive, and that's coins. Some people love them and some people hate them. To me, Mario Kart is still Mario Kart with or without coins, so I'm pretty indifferent as to whether or not they come back. However, what we absolutely do need is an item selection option. This was added as an update to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe alongside one of the waves of the Booster Course Pass, and it needs to return. It obviously gives more options to players who all want to play differently, and it's just a very fun feature that can lead to some of the most chaotic moments in Mario Kart. Moving on to some additional changes I think we need to see. First of all, the way you unlock stuff in the game needs to return to its true form. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, almost everything is unlocked by collecting coins, which doesn't make any of the unlockables feel rewarding, whereas Mario Kart Wii basically had a perfect unlockable system. You would unlock different things such as characters, carts, and tracks through many different methods. For instance, some characters were unlocked when you would win a Grand Prix, whereas others were unlocked by being staff ghosts in time trials. The game would consistently reward you for trying out the game's many different modes, and it made everything you unlocked feel special because you never knew what you were going to get. I would absolutely love for Mario Kart 9 to take on Mario Kart Wii's approach when it comes to unlockables for this reason. When it comes to battle mode, however, I think the battle mode we have in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is practically perfect. The battle mode was completely changed from how it was in Mario Kart 8 on the Wii, and now we have 5 entirely different battle modes. Honestly, all a new Mario Kart game would need is some new courses and maybe one new battle mode, as 8 Deluxe already offers the best battle mode we've had in any Mario Kart game. However, earlier I mentioned the possibility of 24-player races. Well, this idea could be extended into a battle mode. If you thought 24 racers on one track is insane, imagine 24 drivers in one arena all trying to hit each other with items. It would be absolutely ridiculous and a lot of fun. Plus, instead of 2 teams of 6 for certain modes, there could be 4 different teams of 6, which could lead to a lot of interesting scenarios. Like maybe if one team takes an early lead, the other teams would start targeting that team and basically band together. This whole idea of having 24 racers is just such a fascinating concept, and I really think there's so much they could do with it, with battle mode being just yet another perfect example of that. Lastly, I want to talk about possible changes that could be made to the online system we currently have. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's online features have definitely become more fleshed out with recent updates. I mean, they randomly added room IDs after 6 years in their most recent update, so as long as a lot of these features return, Mario Kart 9 could have pretty decent online from the start. One thing I would like to see though is an unrated mode. Mario Kart uses VR to basically measure your skill level, and the higher your VR, the more difficult your lobbies become. It would be nice to just have a casual online mode where the lobbies aren't too sweaty and you can just relax while playing the game. Other than that, the online is pretty good where it stands now. Anyways, that's how a Mario Kart 9 could work. Again, it's pretty standard as it's just a successor to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but there's still so much that can be done to shake up the series, and the traditional format isn't anywhere near stale. Now, Mario Kart 9 is the most obvious concept for a new Mario Kart game, but if Nintendo wants this game to be a hit title on their next console, they could definitely try something entirely different that takes a new approach we have never seen before. Perhaps we could get something more grand, a game that practically puts every other Mario Kart title to shame.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is synonymous with one catchphrase: everyone is here. The idea of a Mario Kart Ultimate is one that's been tossed around a ton, but from my perspective, always as a joke. I mean, how could we ever get a Mario Kart game including every single track and character? I mean, it took Mario Kart 8 almost a decade to reach the staggering 96 tracks we have now, and even then, we're still missing a ton of courses and plenty of characters. Adding all of this into a single game simply would not be possible, or would it? This is how the next Mario Kart game could be Mario Kart Ultimate, and how Nintendo would even feasibly take on such an insane project. Not only that, but we're going to talk about what makes this game special, including unique online challenges, limited time game modes, mission mode, crazy unlockables like costumes, and so much more. This is going to be crazy, so hit the subscribe button if you're excited. Well, first of all, this game would have to launch soon after a new console's release in order to take advantage of the entire console's lifespan. To cut to the chase, there's simply no way a Mario Kart game can, or frankly should, launch somehow with every track in Mario Kart history right away. It would be be an unfathomable amount of effort and just not worth it. Instead, I think launching with 32 tracks would be just fine. While going back to 32 as opposed to 8 Deluxe's 48 at launch would be a shock at first, the problematic lack of content would quickly be remedied by this game's main draw: constant free DLC updates. Hold on, yeah, I know. Games as a service are not really a well-respected thing in the industry, and in my opinion, for good reason. Many games following this model end up launching with minimal content in a buggy and messy state, and then lose their community of players accordingly before they can even get their feet underneath them. You could argue that even Nintendo has fallen into this trap recently with games such as Mario Strikers Battle League. However, when done well, these sorts of games can result in some of the most rewarding and content-rich game experiences we've ever seen. Games like Minecraft, Fortnite, No Man's Sky, Rainbow Six Siege. Many of these titles have so much new and exciting content that they're unrecognizable from launch. And while the latter two games launched in a buggy and broken mess, that doesn't have to always be the case. For example, every Splatoon game as a series, they've generally kind of launched in a slightly underwhelming state in terms of maps available at launch, weapons, and all that. But the consistency and quality of the updates kept people coming back over and over and over again. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this, but it is my opinion that the constant updates and live service mentality is what took Splatoon to a brand new, untested, unproven IP on Nintendo's worst-selling console ever to now one of their top series from a critics and sales perspective. Turning the next Mario Kart into a live service game with frequent updates not unlike Splatoon is almost definitely not what Nintendo is going to do with Mario Kart. So if you're currently raging, foaming at the mouth based on this idea I've brought up, there's no need to get all upset. It probably won't happen. But I genuinely do think that if done well, which Nintendo has shown they can do, a Mario Kart game with consistent updates would be huge. I mean, look at the impact the Booster Course Pass had on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Those were paid updates to a damn near decade-old game that only dropped every 4 months and still dominated Nintendo discussions for 2 years. Imagine the first new Mario Kart in almost 10 years receiving consistent updates. This would be absolutely insane, and in no doubt propel Mario Kart Ultimate to be a force rivaling or even surpassing the incredible 8 Deluxe. But we'll get to that shortly. For now, let's take a closer look at how this game would launch. I personally think that 32 tracks, while less than what 8 Deluxe had at launch, would still work just fine for this game. 16 new and 16 retro. As for characters, as controversial as this might be, I only think they need to launch with these 16 characters. Yes, I know this would be considered an abysmally small roster and would probably receive its fair share of backlash, but I think that could be mitigated by showing off some of the soon-to-be-added returning fan favorites, and even a few off-the-wall racers to be added like Lubba here, not too dissimilar to how Nintendo shows upcoming games for NSO when announcing those services. However, while I think it's okay to launch with an underwhelming track and character selection, the items pretty much have to be nailed from the start. Adding in items as updates, while cool, would be a bit much. I think adding crazy and game-altering items would specifically work really well in limited-time online modes, which I'll talk about in a bit, but I'd prefer if the main items were in the game from the beginning. While Mario Kart Ultimate is obviously launching in a feature-complete state, it's a bit light on the content side of things. Let's fix that. My vision for a Mario Kart with consistent content updates comes down to 4 main things: cups, characters, costumes, and carts. Starting off with the cups, this is the main point of contention. Obviously, getting new characters and kart parts is cool, but none of that matters in the slightest if you don't have a bunch of cool courses to drive on. Ideally, they would add in specific tracks individually. That way we could get a new course every, say, 2 weeks, kinda like Mario Kart Tour. But while adding individual tracks would work for online and versus mode, this would massively overcomplicate the Grand Prix mode, and I just don't see Nintendo following this path. Instead, I see Nintendo adding in, wait for it, a new cup roughly every 40 days.
You serious?
Yes, I know, getting cups that frequently sounds ludicrous, but if you think about it, it might not be as bad as you first think. Every 40 days, we'd get a new season of Mario Kart, and we'd get a new cup alongside that. Looking at the only 2 comparative examples we can go by, the Booster Course Pass received 6 cups a year, meaning 1 cup roughly every 60 days. But the Booster Course Pass presumably also had a way smaller budget and development team than a full game with this concept would have. Tour had inconsistent track releases, but when it was popping, it would release 1 or sometimes 2 tracks every 2 2 weeks. Naturally, these tracks were a lot easier to create because of the mobile aspect, but again, Ultimate's dev team would dwarf Tour's, who also had to make reverse trick and reverse trick variants for almost all their courses. Layer in the fact that Nintendo would obviously build up a decent backlog of already finished courses ready to be released during the game's initial development, and that the majority of these courses could be retros and even potentially lifted from 8 Deluxe or the Booster Course Pass with obvious gameplay and graphical overhauls, and I think this once every 40-day idea is not nearly as far-fetched as you may think. Now, technically, this is where I'm supposed to say what courses I'd want, but with the Ultimate tagline, it's kind of clear that it would be every course. However, I don't think this is technically a good idea, but I do think there are some little technicalities Nintendo can use to skirt around this. Main one being, a lot of courses from the SNES and Game Boy game have different variants. There's like Donut Plains 1, 2, 3, all of them. I do not think we need all of this. Like, we do not need to play 4 different vanilla lakes. I think for those ones, just picking what is generally considered to be the best of those original variants works perfectly fine. If they want to add in all of them, sure, go for it, but I don't think anyone would say, oh, technically, not everything is here, if there were just like only 1 vanilla lakes instead of, what, are there like 3 of them? All 3 of them? 4 of them? One other really important thing is, unfortunately, they cannot completely ditch nitros for this game. Original tracks are so cool, and the Mario Kart franchise is kind of in desperate need of them. Of course, we got a couple of them with the Booster Course Pass, like Yoshi's Island and Squeaky Clean Sprint, but just like Smash Ultimate got a bunch of cool newcomers, especially with the DLC, we'd need to get some newcomers here too. I understand, it's asking for a lot, but this game would obviously sell incredibly well, so it would not really be too surprising if Nintendo supported a new Mario Kart for a good 4 or 5 years. I know that sounds crazy when thinking about Nintendo, but A, it's Mario Kart, their top-selling franchise, and B, all the games I listed earlier have been getting updates for much longer than that. It's definitely not impossible, and this entire idea kind of goes down the drain if they do the Ultimate tagline, but sacrifice it by not giving us a ton of new courses too. We don't need a bunch, but they can't abandon them entirely. As for characters, I personally believe we could get anywhere between 1 to 3 per season. Adding in a new character every season, and especially adding in fan favorites when we get a cup that's on the weaker side, would be perfect for keeping players coming back. Also, when I say characters, I'm not talking about this, or this, and definitely not this. These all count as costumes in my eyes. Costumes will definitely be added too, but it's the system for unlocking those that'll really take Mario Kart Ultimate for the next level. When talking about getting costumes and kart parts added in, we need to discuss the rewards. Imagine every season, there's a board of challenges, and the more challenges you do, the more stuff you unlock. They could add in a decent chunk of costumes and kart parts every single season. These do not take much development time at all. Costumes are literally just models that you could even rip from Tour, and kart parts obviously have to have the individual kart stats, but not even entirely. The game could launch with a bunch of unique karts, and then the majority of the updated karts could just be reskins of karts we already have, or just use the same stats as karts we already have. I think this challenge system is perfect. The more challenges you do, the more stuff you unlock. This would encourage online play and also keep people consistently playing, as Mario Kart Ultimate could be alive getting updates and new karts and challenges for years after launch. Now, interestingly, these challenges obviously would change every season, but the rewards do not disappear. Making stuff like Battle Pass rewards disappear in Fortnite kinda makes sense, because that's a free-to-play game. But given that Mario Kart Ultimate would still be a fully priced title, it would be incredibly scummy to have limited time items where it's just like, oh, you weren't playing during this time, you don't get this item. Instead, I think you should be able to purchase these season challenge boards from the shop. You can spend different coins that you collect, buy the challenges back from maybe a season you missed, and that way you're able to collect the seasonal rewards even after the season ends. You could even pick up right where you left off progress-wise if you had already done some of the challenge, but just weren't able to complete the whole board within the time. This entire system adds unfathomable amounts of replayability. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe already has so much replayability just built into it, not even counting getting all the Booster Course Pass updates just because it has online. But if you think about it, all you can do online is try and make your number go up. Ooh, so fun. I mean, it is fun because Mario Kart's fun, but having that additional incentive of doing certain challenges, such as winning certain games, maybe winning certain games as X character, winning games with bikes or karts, hitting certain amount of racers with a green shell, red shell. There are so many different challenges that they could implement, and this just adds so much replayability while also adding consistent consistent content. It's a win-win. I don't see who possibly doesn't like this. So that's how I think Mario Kart Ultimate could work, in the sense of just consistently adding in new courses. Do I think they'll eventually end up adding every single course into the game? Well, no, but if it were to ever happen, it would have to be in this style with consistent updates. However, Mario Kart Ultimate's two coolest things in my opinion are features I haven't even talked about yet, so let's jump into those now. First, online. Obviously, you do the challenges online, so that already adds replayability as I said, but I think Mario Kart Ultimate should have a pure ranked mode. You can have casual mode, and maybe they still include VR, so you can try and get your number as high as possible, but I think a ranked or league mode that maybe features tournaments at specific times and a ranking system like bronze, silver, gold, superstar. Trying to climb the ranks in different leagues or stuff like that would be so cool. I spent hundreds of hours in Splatoon trying to grind rank to get up to the elusive rank X. I would be ecstatic if I could do the same thing in Mario Kart. Additionally, the online could have certain limited time game modes that are lobbies with certain very crazy rules that you would just never find in a usual game. The possibilities here are literally endless. Maybe everyone now has like 4 item slots, so it's item mayhem. Maybe it's shells only. Maybe there are unique items that are completely overpowered, like a golden shell or something, that's basically just a blue shell, but it goes to the person in front of you. Maybe there's a game mode where there's 4 laps for every race, and you start out at 50cc, then for the second lap 100cc, then the third 150, and the fourth you go at 200. Idea-wise, there's just the sky's the limit. These limited time game modes would be so cool, and again, just increase replayability, which obviously is a massive point, not just for any game, but especially games that have consistent updates. You need to keep people playing so they can continue enjoying the updates that the development team is working so hard to put out. Limited time game modes would do exactly that. Like, even in Splatoon, I guess you could consider a Splatfest a limited time game mode. Whenever that comes out, it feels like everyone's back on Splatoon. These limited time game modes would be an event, and I think it's such a cool idea. And then next, we've talked about online a lot, because I think the next Mario Kart game will lean into it pretty heavily. But obviously, there should be some stuff for people playing single player, so let me introduce you to Mission Mode. Mission Mode on Mario Kart DS, what even needs to be said about it? It's a bunch of unique missions, you get graded on each one, there are cool little challenges, boss fights, there's so much stuff, and adding in a full mission, or hey, you could even add a couple small cutscenes and call it a story mode. Adding this in would allow for so much more replayability. Not only could you time trial certain missions on top of just random courses, but if we're already adding in a bunch of costumes and characters, locking some of these behind mission mode would be a no-brainer. I feel like mission mode would specifically work really well in a Mario Kart Ultimate style, because if this game is going to be kind of like a constantly getting updates, really focused on online, of course, you can obviously play split screen at home with your friends, but if you happen to be out and about, maybe on an airplane or something, and don't have anyone else to play with in split screen, mission mode would be absolutely perfect. It's one of the most underrated features in Mario Kart history, but it's never been brought back, and I really hope it does get brought back for this game. So that's what I think Mario Kart Ultimate could be. Again, if Nintendo wants to lean into the everyone is here or every track is here idea, it's just physically not possible to have that all done from launch. So a live service game would be the only possible way to do it. Would this work? I started off scripting this video thinking, no, I would hate if Mario Kart turned into kind of a live service game with constant updates, but the more and more I think about it, this would be awesome. I mean, we've all seen those screenshots of like all the content in Mario Kart Tour towards the end of that game's life, and everyone I remember who didn't play Tour was a little jealous that all of this cool content was locked behind a mobile game that unfortunately was infested with tons of microtransactions and just didn't really play like a normal Mario Kart. Seriously, Tour heads, like, I'm glad you guys got all that content, but you gotta understand, the vast majority of Mario Kart players do not want to build up a combo. We just want to race on a bunch of cool tracks with a bunch of cool characters, and I think Nintendo kind of transforming Mario Kart into the Splatoon-esque style of constant updates could seriously make this next game one of the best ever, because how else would they top Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? It feels like an impossible task. However, it's not an impossible task, as this last concept, despite being by far the most controversial in this video, would undoubtedly propel the next Mario Kart game to be the biggest and most important in the entire series. Mac, take it away.
Let me introduce you to Nintendo Kart.
This guy stinks!
Hey, I know many of you are not exactly interested in that. Keeping Mario Kart Mario pure is a sentiment I see all over the internet. And I think for some valid reasons. You get creative tracks not based on anything other than the developers' imaginations. Unique obscure characters from the series are playable, And the one Nintendo probably cares the most about? Name recognition. Why change the name of your biggest moneymaker franchise? We've seen how badly that can go for some companies. But for one game in the series, I don't think that's all that bad. If you guys are really stuck on the name not being Nintendo Kart, sure, fine, call it something like Mario Kart Crossroads. But Nintendo Kart to me sounds grand and important. Something they definitely want to lean into following 8 Deluxe. So the unfortunate truth about Nintendo Kart is that I think to make it work, some pretty significant things will need to be cut.
They must have cut me.
First and foremost, most of the character roster. And when I say cut, I mean it. Only 7 Mario characters will be in this game. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Rosalina, Wario, and Bowser. Those will be the only returning characters. I know it's harsh, but we must make room for other non-Mario characters, and I don't exactly want a 100 character roster. But you may have noticed I only said 6 characters, and that's because I'm gonna add 1 character from the Mario series that hasn't made a Mario Kart appearance, and that's Prince Florian. Okay, put down your pitchforks. I know, he's obviously not as iconic as Toad or Daisy. However, some of my favorite things about these games are the weird, quirky time period specific characters that make appearances. Think Queen Bee in 7 or Funky Kong in Wii. If you really hate him, throw in Toad or Daisy, but for my roster, Florian is staying. So when it comes to the rest of the roster, I think 36 is a nice, manageable number. I'm going to name which series will be represented and what characters from said series will be in. Firstly, from the Donkey Kong series, I expect 3, and they're not exactly going to be the ones you expect. I'm adding DK, Dixie, and Cranky. No Diddy or Funky. I don't know, I just kind of want some new stuff. Why recycle old characters when you can have fresh new faces? Then for Zelda, we've got Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf. Pretty simple. Splatoon's got 4. Inkling, Octoline, Marie, and Judd. Now, why in the world would I put Judd in over characters like Callie, Off the Hook, or Deep Cut? Well, Judd's sick and I want him in. That's why. Then for Kirby, we have Kirby, Meta Knight, and King Dedede. Pokemon has Pikachu, Charizard, and Greninja. For Animal Crossing, I'll be adding Villager, Isabelle, Tom Nook, and Mabel. So now from the Yoshi series, I'm adding Yoshi, Shy Guy, and Birdo. While neither of them are technically Yoshi characters, as they both came from Super Mario Bros. 2, they just feel like Yoshi characters at this point, so that's why they're here. And then from Metroid, I'm just adding Samus, because Ridley is too big. Star Fox gets Fox and Falco, F-Zero gets Captain Falcon, and to round out this perfect 36-man roster of Nintendo All-Stars, I'm adding 2 characters from different series, but we're going to call them the Retro Age characters, and that's Rob and Game & Watch. Next, let's talk about the tracks. Firstly, we have to talk about retro tracks. I love retro tracks as much as the next guy, but after the Booster Course Pass, it just feels redundant. Like, why? We just did that for 2 years and you're really going to clog up a new course selection with recycled content instead of brand new tracks? That personally makes 0 sense. All 40 tracks in this game will be brand new and will be based on different Nintendo series. Each cup will be series specific. So for example, the first cup will be the Mario Cup with Mario tracks. The second will be the Zelda Cup with Zelda tracks. And the third will be the DK Cup with DK tracks, and so on and so forth. Now, I can hear all of you freaking out in the comments on how boring that would be. However, I think it would be the opposite. Racing on 4 completely unique series-specific tracks, each based on a different setting found in these games, would be insanely cool. The immersion of going from, I don't know, this is just an example, Pallet Town to Safari Zone to Victory Road to Distortion World would just incorporate such unique storytelling to the Grand Prix not found in any other game in the series. And at the end of that, unlocking a character from that series would just feel so rewarding. Now, I'm no 3D modeler or anything, so these are just some menu mock-ups I made. But I'm going to go through and talk about some sick ideas I have for some tracks. And be sure to let me know what track ideas you have in the comments. Firstly, we have a Mario Kart Wonder track. Preferably one based on Piranha Plants on Parade. No level and no video game has ever made me smile and laugh like that level did. And having a track devolve into chaos with Piranha Plants walking all over the track and singing would just be hilarious. Next, for the DK series, I want to see a track in the pseudo 3D art style from the old country games, like from the SNES. We saw what Nintendo was able to do with Yoshi's Island, so let's see a Donkey Kong Country track in action. For the Zelda Cup, I think we have to have something from Tears of the Kingdom. Personally, I think we should have a Mount Wario-like 3-part track with 1 lap taking place in the Sky Islands, 1 taking place in the surface world, and the last in the depths. I think that would be so fun and really explore the massive nature of that game. When it comes to Splatoon, there are plenty of maps I could choose from, like Port Mackerel or Kelp Dome. But in my opinion, Blackbelly Skate Park is the perfect track for Nintendo Kart. Imagine all the half pipes on this track. Oh my god, I'd literally be in heaven. For Kirby, we have to have some throwback to Air Ride. Maybe even a course based on the city trial mode everybody loves. That would be so sick. To give Animal Crossing a unique track, I believe a perfect idea is one based on the Dream Suite. What if every time you boot into a race, the layout is completely unique, sorta like Excite Bike Arena, but this time much more visually diverse? It would be such a unique experience each time and lead to so many fun and refreshing experiences even on your 100th playthrough. I would say they should make a course based on Crafted World because that game has really cool visuals, but that game just blows and I'm not gonna do that. Instead, I'm choosing Woolly World. I think there are so many cool ways you can implement the yarn mechanic into this course, along with all the Poochies acting as obstacles. Metroid Dread is up there with Mario Kart Deluxe as one of the best looking games Nintendo has ever made, so it would be a match made in heaven for a Metroid track to come from this game. I think Planet ZDR would make the perfect Metroid track. In 8 Deluxe, Nintendo really wanted their Rainbow Road to be based on a space station, and although most people don't think they quite stuck the landing, I think they can with this next track from the Star Fox series. Orbital Gate sounds like the perfect option for Star Fox. As most of their missions take place in space, Orbital Gate will ground them to some solid satellite. And if we can't have Orbital Gate, let's get Corneria. Now, for the one many of you have been waiting for, what's the next F-Zero track going to be? With the release of F-Zero 99, there's been a resurgence in hype around this series, and whether or not the next game is Nintendo Kart, I definitely believe we'll be getting a new F-Zero track. Big Blue and Mute City are by far some of the most popular tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And in my opinion, I believe the next F-Zero track is going to be Firefield. Firefield is a new track to F-Zero 99, and it delivers on all levels. It's got a super fun layout, and if we could see a nod to the Skyway on this track by spreading super sparks all over the track to open up the shortcut, I think this track would be a near lock for this game. And if you don't believe me, listen to its theme. So those are just a few ideas I had for tracks, but if you really enjoyed that, be sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more ideas for Nintendo tracks. I would literally do this all day. Now, I have one more secret mode, and I'll bring it up in a second, so stay tuned. But before I do, let's talk about some items that we could see added to the game. In my opinion, I could see it being something similar to Double Dash, where each character of a certain series would get a special item. To start off, let's talk about Splatoon's special item, the Booyah Bomb. While the blooper has been a mainstay for years, most people at this point know it's one of the most useless in the series. Bringing the mechanic into the modern era with the Booyah Bomb from Splatoon would without a doubt make this a better item. It would act as a localized lightning bolt that also covers your opponent's screens in ink. Next, let's add Game & Watch's hammer. My favorite part of his character in Smash is his RNG hammer. Rolling a 9 at the last second to win a match is by far one of the most satisfying things you can do in gaming. So bringing it over to Mario Kart and adding even more random chaos to this game would just be indescribably cool. Now, I knew I had to add something from the new Zelda games, and while at first I thought about adding Stasis or Cryonis, by far the funniest one and most powerful is Recall. Now, imagine someone hitting the gap jump on Mushroom Gorge and about to win a race when all of a sudden you hit them with Recall and they reverse what they did for the last 5 seconds. Would that be entirely broken and unfair? Sure. Would it make for some amazing moments? 100%. Now, if we're adding an item from Animal Crossing, we have to add the Party Popper. It would basically be a weaker super horn that couldn't break items, but it would stun racers as you drive by them. Now, this next one's a bit weird, but just hear me out. It's a Yoshi tongue which grabs another player in front of you and then uses them as an egg blocker behind you. They would still be moving forward as they'll be riding along behind you, but they won't start racing again until the egg has been broken. Now, maybe not the best gameplay wise, as one player will basically be in timeout until they've been saved, but it's just a really funny idea. Another similar idea I had was from the Pokemon franchise, and it's a Pokeball. Pretty much you throw a Pokeball at another racer, and if you hit them, they get stuck in it and have to mash out to escape. It would be tricky to use, kind of like a green shell, but if you're able to pull it off, the player who gets hit will end up being screwed trying to catch up. Next, what if we had a vacuum item based solely on Kirby's suck abilities, that when used will suck up any racers in front of you and shoot them out as a warp store behind the user. Again, maybe a bit overpowered, but I'm trying to come up with some fun ideas, not boring ones. Then finally for Donkey Kong, let's throw it back all the way to the arcade days and give them a barrel. Basically, once they receive the barrel item, they'll be able to spam the barrels behind them for a short amount of time like a fire flower. However, they will not break until either they hit a wall or fall off the track. So the next time you pass that part of the track, there will still be some barrels there and cause trouble for other players. So, we've got 48 unique series-specific tracks, 36 Nintendo characters, 12 series-exclusive items, all in one game. But what comes after that? Well, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. After beating all 12 cups in 200cc, you'll unlock something called the Nintendo Circuit. The Nintendo Circuit is the final ultimate test for Mario Kart racers. In it, you'll race on 12 random courses, one from each of the 12 series cups. You'll start on your home track decided by whichever character you chose, and from then on, you race tooth and nail to progress to the next round. That's because every 4 races, there will be a cut. The bottom 4 racers will be eliminated and not proceed to the next race. It's a grind, it's a gauntlet, and if you happen to have the stamina to make it all the way to the end, you'll be rewarded with something so rare and so coveted that it'll make your entire journey worth it. All your hard work will pay off, and you'll unlock an English translation of Mother 3. Alright, I'm just kidding, it'll probably be something stupid like Gold Mario, but you get the point.
Thanks, Mac. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video going over what the next Mario Kart could be. I think between a more traditional Mario Kart 9, a Mario Kart Ultimate that leans into the tour style of frequent updates, or completely jumping the shark and turning Mario Kart into Nintendo Kart, one of these ideas will be what Nintendo goes forward with. I'm so curious to see what you guys think about these concepts, so let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, click the button on screen right now to hear me rant about one problem with every single course in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Yes, seriously, I found something wrong with every single course. I really love that video, so click the button on screen right now if you want to watch it.